You started shooting video on this subject in Prince William County. And because you didn't want to wait for the time it takes to shoot an entire film and edit it and get it distributed, you started just releasing the pieces that you did shoot, and I assume edit, onto YouTube. And that's where you got your start with this subject and with this film. Is that basically correct?
That's true.
How did you get involved?
We were reading in the Washington Post about this culture war that in our daily lives we weren't seeing. And so Annabelle and I decided to pick up a camera and begin to investigate. And the person who was at the center of all of this was Greg Latique, a blogger. We went to visit Greg, and he invited us to come to a meeting where he was bringing together his followers in a group called Help Save Manassas, and we videotaped that. Greg directed us toward other people he thought we should talk to, including a Mexican-American man who owned the property after which the film is named. These two men were two of the early stars of our serial documentary that we put up on YouTube.
And indeed, quite a cast of characters in this documentary. When you take a look at the citizens, the people who basically came out to defend the Hispanic community, obviously there was that counterpart of, it was vitriolic at times, it would seem to me.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think what happens is when you actually marry the divisiveness of partisanship to racial anxieties and racial polarization, especially in the context of an election, then things can become really hyperbolic and hysterical, actually, because people are no longer filtering information based on whether it's accurate or verifiable. They accept and reject information based on whether it helps or hurts their candidate or their cause. And so people take liberties with that and begin to say things that, if they were true, yes, would be cause for alarm, but so often they're just simply not true. They're completely false, but they're heightening the level of anger or hysteria that supports a political candidate or a policy.
Yeah. Your documentary, 9500 Liberty, if people are the same wherever you go, then this is a very eye-opening study. I mean, you look at that town, businesses boarded up, or the community rather, the largest number of foreclosures of homes in the entire region. So do you see that very sort of thing in the nation and in Arizona as a result of this conflict between two very different points of view?
Well, one thing I can say for sure is that people who are very much focused on their resentment toward undocumented immigrants or immigrants in general tend not to be concerned about the economy or the economic impact. So that's an argument that's very persuasive to the majority of Americans and to the majority of Republicans and to the majority of Democrats. And ultimately that was a big reason why we repealed our law. But I think right now in Arizona, people are so polarized that they're not really interested in those kinds of best practices studies or those kind of facts and figures. But ultimately, I think that if you can put aside those resentments we have for one another and focus on what's best for a community or a state or a country as a whole, then we do need to take the economy into account when we make decisions.
Yes, and 9500 Liberty was the address in Prince William County where a giant banner had been put up fighting back for what was perceived to be racism, and which many people consider SB 1070, for instance, to be a racist law.
Well, I think that is the most hurtful way to put it. And I think many people do feel hurt. They feel as if the law is directed at the Latino community. And I think other people who really value tolerance and diversity are also hurt by the law. And so they choose to use the word racist as a way to hurt people back. And I don't think that's necessary. I don't think it's helpful. It certainly isn't helpful.
In another clip, a woman asks county officials not to forget who is responsible for 9/11 illegals, while a man tells them don't confuse the 9/11 with the 7-Eleven. The guys at the 7-Eleven just want to work. Very divergent points of view there, and lots of anger in the process.
Yeah, that 9/11 reference really does get a hoot out of the audience. You'll probably see that tonight. I think that in recent history, the attacks of September 11th and the politicization of those attacks in support of the run-up to the Iraq War served somewhat as a blueprint for how we arrived at the policy we arrived at in Prince William County.
Got it.
Where you declare that there is an invasion or an enemy or a threat, and only this policy can help protect the people. And if you stand against the policy, then you're really not a patriot, because you are standing in the way of the American side in a war. And so I think when people try to make references to headless bodies in the desert, or inferring that immigrants from Mexico committed the 9/11 attacks, what they're trying to do is tap into a reservoir of fear that was created by 9/11 and the War on Terror in order to support a policy that really is quite a separate issue.
Well, I think that in your discourse in this conversation, you do exhibit a refreshing sort of common ground, middle ground, if you will. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, you said that you can see both sides in the issue. I think it's because it's your job to listen. And I performed that role for a long time in my county, not only listening, but then sharing other people's thoughts on YouTube, so that people who might not be willing to talk to one another could at least hear each other's perspective by going to our YouTube channel, and then maybe respond to that with a comment or two. So in many ways, we were the therapists of Prince William County. We were running around talking to people and having them share what's really motivating them. And sometimes if you talk to them a little longer and get past those standard talking points, there is room for common ground.
I want to thank Eric Byler. Anything you want to say about tonight's presentation?
Please do come and have an open mind. Please don't be judgmental toward my fellow Prince William County residents. We were all made to be very afraid of each other, of immigrants, of the possibility that there could be violence in our community. And whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or a member of the religious community or the business community or just an ordinary citizen, nobody responds well to fear. But in the second half of this movie, you'll find a blueprint for how a community that's really been infected by polarization and fear politics can come together around common principles and common goals, such as public safety. We learned that the policy was having a negative impact on public safety, such as the economy. We learned that the policy was having a negative impact on our economy. And so with new information, we made a different decision, and we actually repealed this law. And I'm not saying that's what you need to do in Arizona,
No.
but I'm just here to provide information on a similar case.